deer, one beer, one kill, one gun, one fight, that fatal one night that would make dad run. I often ask, did I play a role in that outcome? And if I did as a kid, I often ask, how come? We're from living in the Bay to the Roxbury slums, where I shot my first jumper and saw my first jump, standing on the corner chewing on rocks like gum.
The next topic we're going to discuss are statements made by Anthony Joshua. Anthony Joshua made some statements about Tyson Fury. I'm going to share the screen here and just play this video.
Vladimir Klitschko, that was his first real challenge, and he overcame that. And then I think that took him maybe 8 years before, you know, he turned professional and he's worked his way up where he's built his experience, his confidence. He finally fought Vladimir Klitschko. Then he had some years out, and then he fought Deontay Wilder. So it's like, I just think he hasn't been in the deep end enough to show me that he can swim there for a long time, in my opinion. I just think you have to continuously prove to me that you belong there. You don't just come there once or twice. You've got to continuously prove to compete against championship level fighters. And then that's, for me as a fighter, that's how you'll gain my respect. Vladimir Klitschko.
All right. We'll just move to this article. And this is an article by Metro. And in this article, there's some quotes by Anthony Joshua. And Anthony Joshua says, if the sport is lacking so much talent, then all you need is feints and movement to be classed as a great of this generation. With hard work, motivation, and studying, you can overcome that. So what people see in Fury that is so fearsome, intimidating, that he can't be touched at the top level. So he says, so what do people see in Fury that's so intimidating that he can't be touched at the top level? He says, I take him as a serious challenger, of course, but resume, it's taken him a long time to grow. His fight with Vladimir Klitschko was his first real challenge, and he overcame it, but it took him 8 years to build his experience, his confidence. Then he had 2 years out and fought Deontay Wilder. He hasn't been in the deep end long enough to show me that he can swim there for a long time. So based on comments that Anthony Joshua has made about Tyson Fury in the videos you saw, what are your thoughts on that, G?
I see his argument, right? However, the only thing I disagree on is because we know Tyson Fury, and Tyson Fury seems extremely confident. And after coming off that devastating performance against Deontay Wilder, I think his battery is on 1,000 trillion going into this AJ fight. So to me, it's almost what AJ saying is cute, but I don't really see how AJ can be like, oh well, you know, he's not really battle tested. He went up against two guys that arguably people were like, yo, these were like major threats in the heavyweight division, and he beat them both. So to kind of downplay that is kind of absurd to me. But in regards to the comments about Fury's skills, like the feints and everything, I'm like, maybe that's just his way of talking trash, because I don't really believe he believes what he's saying. You know, like Fury's style is difficult for anybody in the heavyweight division, literally anyone, including AJ. So for AJ to kind of downplay that style, it doesn't make sense to me, you know, unless he's just saying this because it's like, yo, maybe his PR people are like, hey, you gotta build this fight up. You gotta kind of, you know, diminish his qualities or whatever. I don't know. But to say this type of things, like, I just don't believe AJ, man. I'm being honest, yo. And I like AJ, but I feel like this whole statement, it kind of reminds me of when Wilder's talking trash about Fury. It's like, do you really believe what you're saying? And it's like, to me, you're acting, you know? And so I got the same vibe from that AJ interview with Sky Sports.
All right, Complex.
AJ, my brother, don't do it to yourself. Do not do this to yourself. Listen, everything you're saying has been said before, and I'll say it again. Don't do it to yourself. Look, before Wilder fought Fury, the first time and the second time, I said the same thing. All Fury's got is a bunch of herky-jerky feints and da-da-da-da-da, a little head movement. And, you know, you don't got to, you know, that you could get past that BS. It's harder than it looks, all right? And honestly, I've gained a lot of respect for Fury over time. I like Fury. Fury's actually a great fighter. I liked Fury back when he fought Klitschko. I liked Fury. I thought he was a good fighter. He's the most skillful boxer at heavyweight right now, probably by a country mile, to be honest. He knows the sport at such a deep level. It's like he was born into it. He grew up in it. It's not like he adopted it like Bane. You adopted it. He was made by it, molded by it. Fury knows boxing better than any heavyweight right now. Look, everybody says the same thing. Oh, it's this herky-jerky movement. It's when you're in there with him, first off, he's taller than you. He's longer than you. Then he's moving slick, and he's fast, and he's slippery. It's very hard to hit him. That AJ's got to come on 1,000% if he's going to beat Fury, if they eventually fight. Wilder's going to beat Fury in the third fight anyway, so, don't worry about that, AJ. You're not going to have to deal with that. But anyways, if they fought hypothetically, no, Fury is a tough fighter. And this is the other thing, the whole resume thing. Fury fought Klitschko, and he was young when he fought Klitschko. We got to remember, he's still younger than Wilder. I think he's only like 31, 32, 30, something like that. He's early 30s, right?
Yeah.
He fought Klitschko back when he was young. I know AJ fought him when he's young too, but he fought Klitschko when Klitschko was at the top of his game. Klitschko was like, nobody's beating Klitschko, and Fury sunned him. He didn't just beat him, he sunned him. Like, Klitschko had nothing for Fury. So that's one guy who he did that to. Then he took time off, and then he fought Wilder after a few comeback fights, and he still got it. Look, if AJ wants to win, AJ's going to have to really, really step up his boxing knowledge, really, like he said, study Fury, because Fury is a tough puzzle to solve. Like, if you're going to beat Fury in boxing, you got to really come hard. He does say, oh, well, Fury's not been at that top level in competition. And I said that too when he fought Deontay Wilder. I was like, yo, Deontay Wilder's been in actual championship fights. Fury has never defended a belt, which is true. He won the belt, dropped it. Then he's never won the belt again technically until he beat Wilder, so he's never defended a championship. So you can say he's only had 2 title fights, right? At the same time, though, in those 2 title fights, he stepped up. That's one other thing about Fury. When the chips are down, he will step up at that moment. And he performs when the lights are on and everything is on him, he performs. So you can't just put it on like, well, he hasn't fought this long competition. And then the other thing, and I'll end on this, is that AJ talking about, oh, well, top level competition. AJ, the best name on your resume is Vladimir Klitschko. So you guys both have a win against Vladimir Klitschko, but I believe he did it better because you went life and death with Klitschko, whereas Klitschko could even touch Fury. And if it's a sport of boxing, you're supposed to swim without getting wet, like Nazim Richardson used to say. And he didn't even get touched by him. He completely outclassed Klitschko. That's one. Then 2, he beat Wilder, who AJ was avoiding. AJ tried to negotiate himself in and out of fights. Well, no, I need I want this much money, or you only get this much, and now I'll fight you when I'm ready. Fury ran.
Delusion is a hell of a drug.
Fury ran to the smoke like, what's up? Fury ran to the smoke like, what's up? He ran to fight Wilder.
Fury ran to the smoke, and Fury took a 60-40 split. Remember that too.
And Wilder and Fury did it overseas. Fury consistently has fought on the road. He fought Klitschko in Germany and still beat him. Fought Wilder in America twice, and he beat him the second time. Draw the first time. People want to say beat him twice, but he performed well overseas. So this is my thing. Look, you cannot discount Fury. No matter what you want to say, whatever you want to hit, you cannot discount him at all. He's the ring champion for a reason. He's at the top of the food chain right now at heavyweight. He's a tough puzzle to solve. Is he unbeatable? No. But it's going to take a special guy to beat him, or a really lucky punch or something, because he's a tough puzzle to solve.
Look, man, here's my thoughts on it. I think I understand where Anthony Josh was coming from. I do. I get what he's saying. Do I buy what he's saying? No, I don't buy what he's saying. Tyson Fury's more than just feints. Tyson Fury's more than just some basic talent that's come to the ring. But I have to give him credit. I know where he's coming from. You have Tyson Fury running around saying that Joshua got beat by some little tubby guy and that he's not really a good fighter. Joshua's saying, check my resume. I got to Klitschko in my 17th fight. I accomplished things faster than you. I fought better opponents than you. When you check Anthony Joshua's resume, although you say the best name on his resume is Vladimir Klitschko, there are other names on his resume that are absent on Tyson Fury's resume, like Dillian White, like Joseph Parker, like Alexander Povetkin, Andy Ruiz. There are a number of good fighters that are missing on Tyson Fury's resume, but they're present on Anthony Joshua's resume. And so when you look at Tyson Fury's resume, there are two impressive names. There's Vladimir Klitschko and there's Deontay Wilder. Although Deontay Wilder is not impressive to me, because to me, you're only as good as what you come up against. And when you beat an American hype job like Michael Grant, like Seth Mitchell, like Deontay Wilder, I don't give much credit for that. But I will say this, he did come and he slayed the hype job, and he deserves credit for that. But I'm not going to give him credit for his victory over Deontay Wilder. The reason why I give Tyson Fury credit is because I believe he is a generational talent, and he did slay Vladimir Klitschko when he was the Dragon. He slayed Vladimir Klitschko at a time when Vladimir Klitschko was on the run, dominating the sport, and handling the division. And Tyson Fury stepped in and he beat him. Tyson Fury is the one who dethroned the 10-year reigning champ. So you got to give him props for that. And he gets that props from me. That is why he is known as the lineal heavyweight championship of the world, for that victory. Now, go to Anthony Joshua. Anthony Joshua then went on to beat Vladimir Klitschko. But he didn't just beat him. He knocked him out, and he retired Vladimir Klitschko. Vladimir Klitschko is no longer active because of what Anthony Joshua did to him. In beating Vladimir Klitschko, Anthony Joshua didn't just get a victory, but he took on superstar status with that fight. That was the fight that made me look at Anthony Joshua and said, this dude's the real deal. And although he beat Vladimir Klitschko after Tyson Fury, I believe he had a better Vladimir Klitschko than Tyson Fury had fought. He had the Vladimir Klitschko that was on a war path, who was looking for redemption. Vladimir Klitschko had walked through so many guys, it just became routine. Tyson Fury actually stepped up and took the title from him, and Klitschko was on a mission to get the title back, and Tyson Fury didn't defend. He couldn't defend because he tested positive for the wild boar meat, for a banned substance, which he blamed on wild boar meat, in addition to his drug use. The story is well known. He went on to balloon to 400 pounds. So he couldn't meet the requirements to defend those titles, and he lost those titles. And Tyson Fury went on to make a statement saying, Anthony Joshua has my belts. And I called Tyson Fury out on that too. They're not your belts because you couldn't meet the requirements to keep those belts. You lost them. Joshua won them. They're Joshua's belts. Here's what I would say. Joshua's only argument over Tyson Fury is that he has a better resume, which is true. He has names on his resume that Tyson Fury doesn't have. He has title defenses. Tyson Fury has none. Anthony Joshua is using his only argument that he has to say, I'm better than Tyson Fury. Tyson Fury uses the only arguments he has to say that he's better than Anthony Joshua, which is Anthony Joshua lost to a tubby guy. I've already had all the belts. Anthony Joshua's holding my belts, which, although I don't agree with that, those are his arguments. In the end, these guys are making arguments against one another, which I'm okay with because they have to do it. Psychologically, they have to get their minds right. Anthony Joshua needs to tell him all the advantages he has over Tyson Fury so he can feel he can beat Tyson Fury. Tyson Fury has to tell himself all the advantages he thinks he has over Anthony Joshua so he can be confident going in the ring to beat Anthony Joshua. When it's all said and done, I believe these are two of the best heavyweights we've seen in a very long time. It's the reason why this fight is exciting. It's the reason the public is finally getting behind a heavyweight fight. when they fight, it will be the first time we had an undisputed heavyweight champion with the lineal status attached. And it will be the first time we truly have a baddest man on the planet. Deontay Wilder, I'm throwing him in there, Complex. He has a chance to mess this up. So does Kubrat Pulev. But in the end, they're special talents. They're both great fighters. They're not just, feints and power. They're not gimmicks. They're both good fighters. So I don't buy that aspect of it, but I get where he's coming from when he says that Tyson Fury hasn't done it over a long time. And I'll close with this. There's a difference between being a hunter and being the hunted. To me, Tyson Fury has shown he can hunt. When you tell Tyson Fury he can't do it, when you tell him it's impossible, he'll go to Germany and he'll beat Vladimir Klitschko. When you tell him he can't beat Deontay Wilder's the hardest puncher in boxing history. He's coming off a layoff. He can go and he can beat that guy. But what happens when you're the guy everybody wants to beat? That's a different type of pressure. That's a different type of mentality. And he hasn't shown that. And I think that's what Anthony Josh was getting into. He hasn't shown that he can win when he's the favorite to win the fight and the guy's hunting him now. See, he has a chance to do that against Deontay Wilder in his first title defense. This is the first time he's going to be hunted. Now, everyone's going to be expecting Tyson Fury to spark out Deontay. Now, everyone's overwhelmingly in favor of Tyson Fury, including myself. This is the first time now where he's going to be hunted. And now he gets to prove that he can handle that pressure, which is a different type of pressure.
No, I totally agree with that last point. You said a whole lot of other nonsense, but that last point was great. Thank you for saying that. You make a good point. It's different. It's one thing, and this is why another reason not to just bring up Wilder again, but this is why I say people got to give Wilder props. When you get to a certain amount of title defenses, when you're the guy and everybody is chasing you, right? And I gotta, anybody who has long title defenses, you gotta give him credit. Everybody's chasing you. It was like it or not, having that WBC strap is the guy's dreams. Like being heavyweight champion of the world. So every time they fight you, this is the biggest fight of their life. For you, it's another fight. So it's a different kind of pressure when guys, these are all grown men who've trained their whole lives, come after you. And Fury's never had to deal with that. Klitschko dealt with that. Klitschko fought numerous guys, guy after guy after guy. And, they come after him, and he took them on one by one. And even AJ has had, now that he's unified the belts and he's fought a lot of tough competition where you are the guy. So it's a different kind of pressure. Fury will go off and fight a Francesco Pianeta or what's that dude from Germany? He'll take these like bum fights because he's like, whatever. He's just playing around. He's not taking it serious. It's another thing when contender after contender after contender is coming after you. That's a different type of pressure. Tough guys, they may not be world beaters, but you can't have an off night because they could catch you and that could be the end of it. So you got to be on every single time. I think the third Wilder fight, if he can do what he did against Wilder the second fight, then I think he's definitely the number one guy. He's a top guy. Honestly, AJ, all this stuff you said about him, like, AJ's had these defenses. And I said that against Fury too. But guess what? You know who had a lot of defenses? Vladimir Klitschko. And Fury sunned him. That was not a better Klitschko a year and a half later at the age of 42 after a long career. He was not the same guy. It was a tough fight that he had with AJ. And that's, to me, I thought AJ was great in that fight, but I thought a lot of guys could have probably beat Klitschko that night because Klitschko had already lost. It was a year and a half off. So you're rusty talking about Wilder's resume fighting a guy on a long layoff. Klitschko hadn't had a fight in 18 months, and the last fight before that, he came off a loss. Now, AJ fought him. Thrilling fight, good fight, entertaining, but the way he was hitting AJ, I was like, dog, somebody hits AJ like that, if Wilder hits AJ like that, he's going down. AJ's not getting up again. But anyways, Fury and AJ.
I'm with you complex. So you say that, and you going, man, go ahead, Kaden. Yo, y'all might as well.
Yo, trust me. This is gonna be very short. Facts.
It's not, yeah.
No, hold on. This is gonna be very short for me. Facts. Wilder could have been the one who fought Vladimir Klitschko when he was on that layoff and after Tyson Fury. But Shelly Finkel is well known for saying he was a baby champion and not ready for the fight. Anthony Joshua steps in.
Your
Anthony
timeline is.
Joshua steps in to take the fight.
I gotta keep you factual, though. I gotta keep you factual. I know what the point you're trying to make, but your timeline is off. When Wilder won the fight in January of 2015, he was asked immediately after that, "Are you gonna try and unify with Klitschko?" He wasn't asked. Shelly Finkel was asked. Shelly was like, "Look, we're gonna take a couple fights defenses before we go into the unification fight." Later that year in 2015 is when Klitschko lost his belt. Wilder is keep on defending. Fury calls him out in the ring. They meet up in New York or whatever, right?
Correct.
And Wilder says, "Look, I'm gonna handle my defense. You go handle Klitschko because you have a rematch against Klitschko. When those two things happen, we can fight." Fury falls off the deep end. All the belts get sent off in the distance like the Dragon Balls, and
Correct.
then Wilder continues on. I think Wilder even was injured at some point in between that time as well. But then AJ fights Fury like a year and a half later, because remember,
Klitschko.
Klitschko, because Klitschko and Fury had a date for Manchester to fight. The fight was set. They had press conferences, but then Fury was like, "Yo, I got issues. I can't fight." So that pushed it off even more. So now they fought for the vacant WBA belt once that was vacant. Joshua and Klitschko. Way after Fury had already beat him, he was out of the ring, and then it was for the WBA belt that they fought for. So it's not like
you know what year they fought. Can you tell me what year they fought?
Was it 2017?
Yes. Now, respectfully, you cut me off and I let you say all that because it means absolutely nothing. Only strengthens my point. In 2015, Shelly Finkel said Deontay Wilder was a baby champion and he wasn't ready for Vladimir Klitschko, right? In 2017, when there's a chance to unify for the belts, it could have been Deontay Wilder in that ring with Vladimir Klitschko.
How do we know
Shelly
that?
Finkel, bro.
What you mean?
How do we know that?
You know that because we didn't
Please.
see it happen.
Please, bro. Please, bro. Like,
What do you mean?
yo, this is the classic example of what I'm talking about. I don't even say anything. He interrupts me, and I allow him to take my time.
Go ahead.
But as soon as I start frying, he can't handle it.
All right.
But look.
It's lying.
Shelly Finkel.
When you start lying, I gotta stop
All right,
you.
Let me moderate.
But I'll let you keep on going. My bad.
Hey.
My bad.
Relax. Hayden, go ahead.
My bad.
Shelly Finkel manages Deontay Wilder and Vladimir Klitschko at this time. So if Deontay Wilder wanted to fight Vladimir Klitschko, and if Shelly Finkel thought that Deontay Wilder was ready for Vladimir Klitschko, he could make that fight. But for some reason, Deontay Wilder, who's never had a unification fight in his entire career, doesn't fight Vladimir Klitschko. And Anthony Joshua fights Vladimir Klitschko, and somehow that is seen as a negative by the Deontay Wilder contingent, right? However, they cite Luis Ortiz as his best opponent, an old guy who's never won diddly squat in the amateurs or in the pros. But somehow Luis Ortiz is the boogeyman of the division, and Wilder deserves so much credit for beating him. They'll cite Luis Ortiz as Deontay Wilder's best win, but downplay Vladimir Klitschko for being Anthony Joshua's. My. What type of logic is that? Now, let me just get back to this. Okay? Like I said, Vladimir Klitschko was champion. He was fighting people. And yes, he fought Tyson Fury. Did he underestimate Tyson Fury? Everybody underestimated Tyson Fury. There's footage of Tyson Fury because before the Klitschko fight, Tyson Fury went back to his roots. Tyson Fury was in one of the campers. He was in one of the trailers. And he's showing off like his trailer. He's showing off how he went back to the roots. Now remember, Tyson Fury, his bloodline breeds champions. In gypsy boxing, there have been two King of the Gypsies in Tyson Fury's family. His dad, John Fury, his uncle, Peter Fury, have been professional boxers. You have Huey Fury, Peter Fury's son, who's a professional fighter. You have Tommy Fury, Fury's Tyson's brother. You have Tyson Fury. You have a lineage of boxers. Even think it's Gorman, Bart Gorman, basically, who was king of the Gypsies. In his bloodline is the Gorman, Norman Gorman, I think, or Nathan Gorman, who fought Danny Dubois. This is a family of fighters. His bloodline's boxing. He was underestimated by Vladimir Klitschko, and he went in there and he won. Now, I'm not saying Vladimir Klitschko would have won the rematch. Never said that. I still would pick Fury to win the rematch. But what I'm saying was that wasn't the best Klitschko. And I think that Joshua got a better Klitschko because he knew it was do or die, and he was preparing to get his title back. He was motivated to become, you know how there's 1 time, 2 time, 3 time. He wanted to get the title back. But what you can't do is diminish Anthony Joshua's credit for beating Vladimir Klitschko, because you give people credit for beating Luis Ortiz, Mr. Blood Pressure Medicine himself. I think him and my dad take the same medication.
Yes, man. All right, but I will say this, because I see both sides. But to be honest with you, I have to be honest. I'm leaning towards Tyson actually having a better resume, and and it's not because I'm a Wilder fan, but when you look at Klitschko, he had a 10-year reign. Fury's the one who shut that down. Wilder had a 5-year reign. Fury shut that down. And when you look at Klitschko's resume, like, he had Povetkin, he had Chisora, he had like a number of names that he took off easy, but Fury took him off. So it kind of like, I look at it as, you know, Fury inherits that resume. So AJ has a good resume as well. But when I see like Charles Martin, he won like a vacated title. When he beat
Charles Martin didn't even win that title. That guy got hurt and couldn't continue.
So like, the only person that I was like, all right, was Joseph Parker, because to me, I was like, you know what, I view Joseph Parker as a legitimate champion. You know what I mean? And AJ took that from him, and AJ took it from there was a vacant title when he beat Klitschko. So that's why it's like almost Fury to me took off 2 legitimate champions. And I know you're probably like, well, Wilder ain't a legitimate champion. I get your argument on that. But when you look at it from, like, on paper, you go, you know what? Fury did something under major lights twice. And so you have to give Fury that credit. So that's why I'm like, AJ, what are you talking about? Like, he hasn't been in deep enough waters. Like, what kind of waters you want him to be in? You know what I mean? Like, the two guys.
I don't agree that Fury hasn't been in deep water.
Yeah,
I said from the beginning, I don't agree with that statement. Even your argument, I agree with your argument. I said there's an argument to be made for both fighters. And that argument right there is spot on for Fury. You make that argument, you place Fury at number 1, I co-sign it. You make the argument I made for Anthony Joshua, I co-sign it. That's why we want these guys to fight one another, because there's a legitimate argument. And there have been legitimate arguments. Even for the Wilder fans against Anthony Joshua, they've had their legitimate argument. So that's why we need 1 champ, 1 face, 1 name for the undisputed, meaning there's no more arguments left. And that's just what I want to see. I'm sick of these arguments. I want to know who's the last man standing. Fury knocks off Wilder and Joshua knocks off Pulev, and they get together. Whoever wins that fight's the number 1 guy. If Wilder somehow knocks off Fury and Joshua knocks off Pulev, I say go straight to Joshua Wilder. I don't want to see a 4 fight between Fury and Wilder. If Wilder wins, let Wilder fight Joshua. If Joshua beats Pulev, and then Fury gets the first attempt at the first. He's the first fight for whomever wins that. Although there are these mandatories that are ridiculous.
One thing that y'all have to give credit to Joshua is this. At least, I truly believe in my heart of hearts, if AJ becomes undisputed, AJ will try his hardest to maintain all of those titles. You give Tyson Fury undisputed, and let's see how long that lasts. You know what I mean? I think he'd give it up in a heartbeat. Just like when they were talking about the whole Dillian White situation, he was quick to be like, yo, I don't have to fight you. I'm like, yo, fam, I think you do. You know what I mean? And so if Fury's not going to fight his mandatories, you already know these belts are going to get dispersed again. kind of like what Complex said, like Dragon Balls. You know what I mean?
Yeah, Fury, I think, like I said, he likes the big fights, the pressure on. That's what he gets amped up for. He's not really in the business. I don't see him as being like that long reigning champion, as like, oh, I'm gonna take on all these contenders. He just wants the big fights, the big names, get the money, get out. He's not trying to be here to prove nothing. He beats guys. He's like, look, you guys do all that shit. Then I beat you. Now I get all that juice. He didn't really stick around to like, oh, let me defend all the belts. First off, there's no way to be undisputed and defend the belts because contractually just impossible. Too many mandatories, too many other fights you got to take. So it's whoever becomes undisputed has to give up at least 1 or 2 belts because you can't defend 4 belts at one time. It doesn't work.
Well, actually, I think that time is changing because I know the WBA and the WBC were in talks like last week about what they're doing now is they're making agreements to promote more unifications so that way fighters don't get stripped. So I'm thinking now they're moving in the right direction of, all right, we're not going to punish a fighter for having to, honor one mandatory over another. I think now these federations, the governing bodies, are actually working together to actually maintain unifications,
That's two sanctioned bodies. You need 4. And truthfully, I don't know when the WBO became one of those titles you need to become undisputed because back in the day, I think
it was 2005 or 2000.
Yeah, because back in the day, you only needed the IBF, WBA, and WBC. The WBO just makes it practically impossible to be undisputed champion now.
Yeah. I think they're all working together. I think now they're realizing, like, because there's so much pressure from fans. And, a lot of these fighters, I think, are realizing, like, I don't, like, for example, Tyson Fury. I don't need these belts. I could still be a star with or without these belts. So I think these governing bodies are like, yo, we got to figure this out because what happens when fighters are now like, I'm bigger than the belts? They're not going to make the money. So they got to work together.
Honestly, for me, I would rather see them drop the belts and just fight as opposed to trying to keep up with mandatories and fight. Because, like you said, there's some guys who transcend the belts. The belts are a marketing tool at the end of the day. I mean, it's supposed to be like, oh, you're the champ, you can show this thing off. But at the end of the day, there's the 2 guys fighting that make the fight and that make you a champion. If everybody knows these are the 2 best guys, doesn't matter if somebody else is holding the belt. It's like, yeah, you're holding the belt, but we know that this is the real guy. Floyd Mayweather, at the end of his career, he had belts, but he didn't care. Like, yo, you're a champion, whatever. He didn't need the belts. I even think he dropped belts. He's like, I'm not doing what you want me to do. I'm bigger than the belt. I am the champion. Everybody knows me as a champion. So just fight. Just have these big fights. If Fury and Joshua fight, cool. Then the winner fights another guy. Just keep it going because you have to add in all these belts. There's all these politics. There's all this BS. It hinders the sport. It kills the sport, honestly. When you have 4 guys who can say, I'm a champion. It makes no sense from an athletic sports perspective. It makes it very hard for fans to be like, yo, who's the champion? This guy says the champion. This guy's the champion. He has a belt. He has a belt. There needs to be something.
You're not even talking about like the belts that are like the interim and the silver and like all the other belts that flood the sport.
I think at lightweight, the WBC has 4 belts. Devin Haney, Lomachenko. There's an interim belt that what's his face that young kid's about to fight for against Luke Campbell. What's his face?
Ryan Garcia.
Ryan Garcia, and then who's the other dude? Linares is the diamond belt. I was like, what are you talking about? The sport, that's just the WBC, not even the WBA, the IBF, the WBO. And WBA has a super champion and a regular champion. And
that's champion. The super and regular is crazy. It's like
it's crazy. The whole thing is crazy.
It does make sense. Super just means you're unified. So when you unify with another belt, they replace the regular with the super, and then pretty much the regular is, and how I interpret it is, you're just the mandatory or you're first up at super. That's how I look at it, anyways.
Well, that's why
belt. You're just first up to get the WBC fight. You know what I mean?
Yeah, and we need in this video, but I'll just say this briefly, and then we should close because of the timing. But that's why we need undisputed. So back in the days, it was evident who the champion was. You always had an undisputed guy. You had Mike Tyson, 87, was undisputed, Buster Douglas became undisputed. Evander Holyfield became undisputed. Riddick Bowe became undisputed. Lennox Lewis became undisputed, and then Lennox Lewis retired. But we always knew who the man was. But once Lennox Lewis retired, the belts were dispersed, and then you had multiple people claiming titles. Then you had the belts in the hands of the Klitschko brothers, but they never fought each other to create undisputed, to align lineal status. And that's why, to me, it's important that we have an undisputed championship fight. Because what that would do is it would make one fighter bigger than the belts. Then it doesn't matter. If Fury wins and Fury becomes undisputed and he decides, I'm dropping belts, I'm only keeping one belt, I'm going to keep fighting, the guy who beats Fury, we all know that's the man. Because Fury's the man, regardless of what titles he holds. With Floyd Mayweather, everyone knew he was the man. He didn't need a belt. We all knew that's the undefeated guy who whoops everyone's behind. He's the man. He didn't need a belt. We knew that. But right now we have a three-way debate. Joshua, Fury, and Wilder. And we still need answers to that three-way debate. We still need answers to that. And so we need that debate settled in the heavyweight division. And once that debate is settled in the heavyweight division, I think moving forward, no one's going to care about the belts.
Exactly. So, Boxing Bros family, please let us know in the comments, is AJ bugging, or is Tyson Fury a legitimate resume, or is AJ's resume legitimate, or is it both? I mean, please like, share, subscribe, follow us on Instagram, Facebook, and Twitter, and check out our podcast on all major podcast platforms. It's the Boxing Bros. Peace. I wanna see what's on your mind. You wanna see what's on my mind. Pimping all the time. I wanna know if you wanna be mine.